And I'm also going to start the webinar.
Sounds great. You know, the public safety thing in our community is really something. I had some dude push me in the supermarket today for no apparent reason. Oh, wait. He looks like that guy.
I just sent you from the governor's office, you and Cynthia. I just sent you an email from the governor's office. You got that? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you must have been in that person's waist, it says.
They didn't like your look.
Usually you say, excuse me. It was good to see you in person.
Likewise.
All right, I think we're at 6 o'clock. Yeah, we're 6:01. So I don't know that we need to make this such a long meeting. I just kind of wanted to circle back on a couple of things that we talked about the last time. So I guess the first thing that I want to find out from Jeremy, what is, did we miss the deadline for that capstone, for that Wagner's capstone project?
Oh, I don't think so, but I think it's coming up. It's very close.
Because,
do you want me to call roll?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's start there. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're a small group. I think everybody's muted already. So when I call your name, please unmute yourself. Then acknowledge your name and then mute yourself again. Cesar Zuniga.
Present.
Thank you. Julio Pena. Pat Ruiz.
Here.
Thank you. Karen Rolnick. Cindy Vandenbosch.
Present.
Thank you. Cynthia Gonzalez.
Here.
Thank you. Victor Swinton.
Present.
Thank you. Sam Sierra.
Present. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Cesar, roll is called. Board members, if you are not a committee member, I am going to write your name down.
And I see Julio. I know he sent us an email earlier that he's going to be present, but only on his phone. So I think he just signed in.
There he is.
Okay, cool. So
Hi.
I was saying, Jeremy, and maybe John, this is something that I might want to ask you to help us. I saw an email a few weeks ago related to the Wagner capstone projects, the ones it's the same program we used when we did the IC rezoning. And I'm just kind of wondering, since we started to talk about, community-wide planning, that could be kind of the tool, if you will, for us to organize some of these conversations. So Jeremy, can you resend me that information and I'll have a look at it with John and maybe
I'll look for it right now.
Yeah. So because I can't think of any other, I don't know, tool or process for us to do this with. Well, I mean, I can think of 100 others that we'd have to pay for. But John, do you recall, was there a fee related to using the students for the study we did?
Yeah, it's $5,000, but it's for a semester. I mean, Cesar, this is the first I've heard of this. I mean, I didn't really think you were looking to go back I mean, there are other universities as well. As you remember, Hunter did a piece for us as well. And I'm not sure NYU Stern, if we wanted to be more in the business world. But, in each one of these things, we have to put together a proposal. And, I don't know. If you have time to do that would be great.
Sure. No, I get it. And So maybe that's a place to start, right? Is to look at because you're right. I totally forgot about Hunter. And that one, there wasn't a fee attached to that one, correct? That was or am I misremembering
Well,
that?
but I mean, it all has to relate to usually a class, right? It's their either capstone or thesis or whatever group project at the end of a semester.
Right.
The assumption is you're looking at 20, this fall, right?
Yeah.
And then usually it's a year. So it's fall to, we're talking a report sometime in May 2024 or 23, I'm sorry.
23, yeah.
So, but again, I mean, I guess we should brainstorm it because there are a lot of different things you can do. Honestly, if you're going to put together a proposal, you got to have a good sense of what you are asking them to do. So,
Sure.
for Industry City, I mean, for the housing plan, it was very clear. We asked them to do a housing plan modeled on the city's housing plan, but for the limited area of Sunset Park. So it was very clear what the deliverable was, what the timing was, what the number of meetings were going to be. But I think, the reason I came to it, I was trying to hear what everyone's thoughts were about this next sort of planning effort, if it is focused on the waterfront or if it's bigger or whatever. I mean, just to understand what you had in your mind.
Yeah, well, so yes to the idea of brainstorming this. And also, I actually, what got me thinking about this was both that email that I saw a few weeks ago from Jeremy, but also I think I actually stumbled upon a capstone, and I'm now forgetting which district it was, where they did something. They did sort of a community-wide kind of a development plan, right? And so I think I'm persuaded by what you're saying, which is let's do a little brainstorming first about the scope, if you will, right? And I initially my thought was the waterfront, but then I think I've been hearing from other folks, including people on this board who feel like maybe it should be a lot more comprehensive than the waterfront, and I think that makes a great deal of sense in a lot of ways. But I'm sorry, there are folks with hands up. Cynthia and Jeremy, did you want to say something about this?
I was just gonna say, I know that Pratt might be another. I mean, it seems like there are probably Columbia probably also.
Okay.
It seems like there's a lot of different places we could go to work with students, and it's about maybe partnering with a professor who has an interest, that really wants to sort of shepherd this project. But I guess just sort of echoing what John had to say, just thinking we need to be clear in what our parameters really are and what can we realistically achieve within the context of a capstone project in a year? Like, what are the questions that we're seeking to answer? And I think one of the questions in my mind, and I don't have the answer to it, I feel like some other people here have better answers, but it isn't the best way to do this to initially do some research and then maybe think about whether updating the 197A is the best approach. It's just what tool is actually going to be effective for change and for not necessarily change, but for responsiveness from our elected officials and from agencies. So, we can do research, but and community engagement process, but what is our end goal is sort of the question in my mind, and what's going to be most effective, the most effective tool.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think your suggestion is right on to start with questions, right? Before we delve into anything else, what are questions that we have, and any any good research or evaluation, that's exactly the starting point, is the questions, the overarching guiding question. So yes, 100% agree with that. Rovika?
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm actually lost about the conversation and what exactly we're talking about. And I know we have other folks, also non-board members, who are calling in. So can we get a little more information about what exactly we're talking about, what we're trying to make a decision on?
Sure. So last time when we met with the executive committee, I brought up the basically the idea of, I guess, a conversation that kind of started right after the Industry City rezoning, but then COVID came, and I think a lot of things went to the side of the road, if you will. And basically the conversation is about trying to have the community board play a more proactive role in planning our community. And I think, there was a lot of interest in doing the waterfront, a different waterfront plan through the 197A plan. Again, as Cynthia mentioned, either amending it or doing a new one. And I keep forgetting, and Jeremy, remind me if this is correct, there is no mechanism to actually amend the existing 197A plan. So we'd have to decide to do a new one. And so, I think the idea behind all of this is based and informed in the experience we had with Industry City, which was that not just Industry City, I think all of these sort of one-off spot rezonings that we've been asked to weigh in on, I think there's a desire from a cross-section of folks to be a little bit more proactive around how we envision the development and the planning of our community. So I brought it up last time. I'm bringing it up again, and this time I'm thinking, what are some of the available sort of tools or technical assistance processes that we can engage with, right? So we've done this before, studies where during IC we did it with Wagner, we did the housing study. So I think, as Cindy and John were mentioning, there's like a lot of options for us to research in terms of partnering with other folks to help us and to give us the technical assistance that we'll need to do the kind of study that we want to do. So this is the beginning of a conversation. I welcome all suggestions and opinions. I definitely will take Cynthia's suggestion first, which is, let's start thinking about like questions and scope, like what do we want to accomplish? And I think one good first jumping off question is it just the waterfront, or is it the entire district? I mean, I think that's a great first question for us to try to resolve.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I didn't know what we were talking about.
No problem. Sorry about that. Okay, Jeremy, you have your hand on? Yep.
Yeah, so first let me confirm for you, yes, there is no mechanism for reopening a 197A, but you could do a different one, a new 197A. Second, capstone, I found the email, I emailed it to you, and the deadline is May 27th.
I'm sorry, May what?
27.
Okay, great, thank you. Cynthia.
Just a thought that one of the challenges I think that we often face as a community board is not having the district level data analysis that we need on various different sort of issues. And so if we're thinking about a 1-year project, to me, I feel like having better data is one area about various different issues, and I'm not going to frame those, but that would be up-to-date data on the issues in our community would be helpful. The other thing, and this would be a different strategy, but maybe we engage someone at Stern who specializes in organizational behavior management about how the community board can be more effective in engaging the community and embarking on a community engagement process. How are we communicating? What can we do better, and chart out a path for reaching a broader range of people that live in the district, so that they're sort of empowered to fully participate. And so it's not the same direction, but I feel like that foundation would help set us up. And it's not that we couldn't do something like that in tandem with another sort of project. But those were just the two thoughts I had.
I really love that idea, Cindy. And I'll tell you, I'm right now in Sunset Park, there's a participatory action research project going on, a PAR project. I can't tell you as a researcher just how happy I am that method has finally come to this community. Now that project is focused on educational issues, but there's nothing preventing us from doing another PAR that focuses on this kind of stuff, right? So I really love the idea around, even before getting to the planning, it's really figuring out how to engage the community more, so that when we actually get to the planning, we have a much better and more representative cross-section of community stakeholders. So I really love that. Thank you for that. Mick.
I would think that you'd approach this, kind of like starting with what the problems are. And that could be, in line with what others have already brought up, which is going out to the community, recanvassing, identifying what the issues are, even though we likely know what they are already, having lived here for a number of years. And then approaching 197A in that framework as solutions for those particular problems and implementing those, while also providing means of feedback for the community as we come up with any sort of draft product, in terms of report that potentially could look to solve some of those longer term issues, not only from a waterfront basis, but also for the district as a whole. Because obviously the waterfront is not going to solve affordable housing because you can't build an industrial. So you have to look at it in a more broader sense.
Thank you. Danny?
I never know how to unmute. I should know how to unmute myself by this point in the pandemic. Just a suggestion that if we go down the path of a 197A, the 197A we did come up with, and that was the last 197A plan that the city accepted. I don't even think there's any currently being proposed right now, but I could be wrong. If we do that again, I would suggest, if it's focused on the waterfront, we narrow it down to something in which we can give to the city and say, first of all, to get it done quicker. Second of all, to narrow the focus. And I'm thinking of something such as manufacturing, and say, how do we ramp up manufacturing in the industrial district? I think it's very relevant now, because we're a small part of a global economy that's rapidly changing as the politics change. And so locally manufacturing or manufacturing in countries and manufacturing space is going to be very important. So how do we fit into that? How do we fit into the next 25 years of basically production, of economic production? Because I have a feeling that, our relationship with countries like China, that produces 85% of stuff that's sold on Fifth Avenue, or any other avenue, is going to change. And so they're going to be looking for spaces and stuff like that, and opportunities for manufacturing. Don't know what it's going to be. But stuff has got to be manufactured, and we have a district that's historically and still has the bones of a manufacturing district. Made in New York campus being an example, but we've got a much larger footprint than that. And I would suggest focusing on one or two aspects of it. And so let's use manufacturing or something like that.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Danny, because you're absolutely right. I think, it's it's incumbent upon us to look at this, not just from our own local perspective, but I'm totally hearing you on sort of the both the regional, but also the global implications of like, what the character of the kind of district that we have. So that's a great point. Lots to think about there. Thank you. Pat?
I don't know if this is a question for now, but are we looking for this to be done for free? And if not for free, do we have any ideas? Do we have money?
All good questions. Look, I certainly think it's possible for us to do it at a very low cost or even no cost. I think it's possible. The question is it preferable, right? I think, given the sort of the consequential nature, the gravity of this, could we put together a funding structure, right? I think that's another one of these questions that I think we first have to get resolved. But that's I think it all, I think back to Cindy's point, it all depends on like, where are we going with this? So definitely something for us to consider at the outset. Thank you, Pat. Jeremy?
So I just wanted to address 197As, having been through the process. If you were truly looking for this to be the opinion of the community, the 197A process is not the way to go because it has to be passed by the Department of City Planning and the City Council. I will give the example of that our original plan said that we want the Department of Sanitation garage, BK7 garage, to move off of the waterfront. But because Department of Sanitation wouldn't agree to that, City Planning would not pass it if it was part of our 197A. So we had to remove it.
Yeah.
So if we truly wanted to be from the community and not from the community with the city agencies weighing in, 197A, which was also a 15-year and an expensive process, might not be the way you want to go.
Yeah, thank you for that context and history. Always appreciated. Katie.
Something that I'm thinking about is the role of, one part of the thing that I'm hearing us talk about is like funding, who pays to support this kind of effort. So there's like the 197A plan, but there are tons of community-based foundations that support organizations in our district, but that also would like jump at the chance to do this, in New York. So I don't think, graduate student work is amazing, but definitely I think for the kind of scale and ambition of what we're talking about, like it really only gets you so far. So I think it's, definitely just focus on like, what is it that this is trying to achieve? And then just the other thing that I'm thinking about sort of in your aspirational question, Cesar, is the community board as a convening entity. And I think that's what's a really interesting question, sort of the muscle that a community board can have. And I'm sure that we can find maybe other examples in New York of where this has been done. But I'm thinking about incredible nonprofits that operate here, incredible nonprofits that are just based and serve Sunset Park and the community board. But like, what does it mean for the community board to be a convening entity? And so that, through this exercise of doing that in terms of visioning, and then the ability as a convening entity, the community board is a convening entity, what could that mean for real change that we want to see from agencies, real change that we want to see. And I'm just leaning on what we're seeing with the last mile trucking and what's basically happened since, we kicked off the special subcommittee in May of sort of this patchwork of electeds and issues and nonprofits, and really the community board being a convening entity to actually advance this. And last night we heard about legislation that's being introduced at the city level at the state level, and a coalition of nonprofits, environmental justice organizations that are now have launched this whole coalition. So I just think, you know, that is what I find exciting about this, a question that you're posing in the role of, you know, community board as convening power. And to Jeremy's point, you know, 15 years is 15 years, that one route, 197, we don't have that luxury, I don't know, privilege or time, like, I mean, given the crises that we're already facing. So yeah, I'll just leave it with, are there community-based foundations? Are there other ways to support this? And then CB7 as a convening entity, I think is a really interesting question.
I thank you, Katie. This is why, from my perspective, multiple brains are always better than one, because like already we're kind of like, you know, really thinking very hard about like all of the different possibilities. So, and I think you're absolutely right about, and you sort of just clarified what I was attempting to communicate the last time and this time, which is I see us as like a convening, the context to convene this conversation, right? And I think you just articulated it really well that, you know, we could absolutely lean into that role and then try to find the resources, either through partnering. I love the idea of community-based organizations and some of these foundations that I know do excellent work to support this kind of thing. And you know, they can sort of do the heavy lifting of the work, right? And we can do the equally heavy lifting of convening and organizing. So I really like that idea. And just since you just spoke about last night, I want to thank you for everything you've done with that committee. You know, I think we should all be very proud of where our work, where we started, and where this work is going. And you know, that there's already legislation being considered, I think is like a real testament to sort of the vision that we had to like get this conversation going and making sure that people engaged and that, you know, all hands on were on deck to like really address a problem that is very consequential. So Katie, thank you for all of that you've done with that committee. It's been awesome. David.
Hi. You know, I was just, I'm very mindful that those days we were sitting around at the CB7 office, and you know, NYU was there, and you looked at everybody and said, you know, this is a very studied community, you know, like lots of data is there. So I think, you know, exploiting what exists already and compiling it in a way which is almost just academic fashion, you know, really is a layer or a wavelength that's part of this conversation. Secondly, just on that theme of nonprofits and local community-based organizations contributing to an overall solution, the Sunset Park bid was the recipient of an Avenue NYC grant from the Department of Small Business Services for a year, but so were AFI and BCA. And so partnered as a trio, we're conducting a door-to-door, business-by-business, property-by-property assessment, aided by one Daniel Murphy, I might add, on Fifth Avenue and 8th Avenue and 4th Avenue and 7th Avenue. So the point there is these community district needs assessments are very codified. The format, the outcome of the format is already established by SBS because they're part of an ongoing tradition. You can look the most recent one up for Bay Ridge, which was completed recently. But the idea I have is that that kind of reporting, that kind of field generation of data can be a really informative in this process, in addition to all that academic stuff that's floating out in the background. And I just want to finish with a really strong vote. For me, it's the entire watershed, you know, everything from the top of the hill, say, you know, Fort Ham, down to the middle of the harbor, and everything from, you know, the far side of the rail cut to the other side of Prospect Avenue is really what we're talking about if we're talking about our community. And so I think the community board is uniquely placed as one of the few entities that's unified in our geography, as apart from, you know, maybe only in addition to the council office, because it looks like our new elected lines are going to be as gerrymandered as ever on the other state and federal levels. So I think comprehensive, community-wide, forward, and pushing the envelope on what the city already knows it needs to do, which is planning, which we don't do, right? Planning and zoning reform, is really the crux of it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That's really insightful. I appreciate that insight.
Well, I can debrief with you in more detail on that thing. But when the time is right, it's just a minor note in this conversation.
Yeah, I'll stop by actually because I'm really curious for sure. Absolutely, Rovika.
My question was also about budget. So just to be clear, we don't actually have any budget for this right now, right?
I think I know the answer to that question, which is no. But Jeremy, there's nothing allocated in the community board budget for this, right?
Nothing allocated, and I have no idea what this would cost, so I have no idea if we have the money for it.
Exactly.
And Jeremy, we would start a new budget in June, right? Or July 1st. So, I mean, technically, if this is something we want to pursue, we could try to put it into our new budget.
Correct. However, my priority right now is to gain the technology to be able to do a hybrid meeting.
Maybe we should push for both. Maybe we should make a case for both.
I think we're making a case for that and a lot of other things off budget.
But I'm kind of with Rovika on this. But again, we can make some choices about what the priorities are. We still have a couple of months, but but yeah, for us, that's a question for us to resolve for sure.
I mean, the city has a very flush budget right now, so we should really think about how do we make that case.
I agree. I totally agree. Cindy.
Yeah, just a quick thought. And this is kind of inspired by the final mile trucking, and also some of the proactive work that we've been doing on the Ability and Access Committee, just to plan and prioritize. I'm just thinking, we have committees and a committee level structure, and they're speaking to what David brought up. So we have, and what you brought up earlier, Cesar. So there's an education study that's underway. Is it possible that the education committee could dig in and have meetings to kind of dig in and do some work in the community that centers around education, and that the Economic Development Waterfront Committee can proactively focus on the sort of manufacturing side of things and gather data and elicit questions and sort of bring this all back to another executive meeting where we're putting forward basically taking inventory of the good research that's been done over the last 10 years about the district and about various different issues. The housing committee, the housing report. So I don't know, I think we need to conduct a review and understand what are we already sitting on and how can we bring that all together? So that's one thing. The other thing that I would like to encourage is that if we are going to embark on addressing issues in our community, I think we need to define the community as the district. If we're pulling together, it needs to be Windsor Terrace and Sunset Park and the defined district, so that we're making sure that we're representing all the people that are living in the community. I realize that's big, and that oftentimes we do focus much more on things that are happening in Sunset Park, as it's a larger kind of cross section of the district. But I want to make sure that the geography is all encompassing of everyone who's living in the district.
Cindy, you make an excellent point. Your last point on the sort of the geography, and I absolutely co-sign that sentiment. However, I would add that there also needs to be kind of a realization that there are certain parts of the district that are more underserved than other parts of the district, and we just have to figure out how to frame that. But I agree in principle that we should include the entire district for sure. If we're going to do the entire district, it should be the entire district, and then just have considerations for again the reality that some of the district is more severely underserved than other parts of the district.
Right. And just in response, like think about transportation and trucking, a comprehensive plan for the whole district is really needed. So we need to think about needs and pinpoint where those are in the district and how they can be served.
100%. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Cindy. John.
It's funny when David Strada was talking about planning, there was a moment in time back 50 years ago in 1969 when actually the Department of City Planning did city planning. And it was a very weird time. Talking to some of the old timers, it might be interesting to talk to B. DeSapio and John Lorenzoni, if he's still alive, and all the people that had started the community board planning process way back when, community districts back in the 60s, it was called. The entire point of the community board was for planning. And, now 50 years later, we don't do that sort of thing. I just wanted to, sort of reference those planning nerds on this call, and you know who you are. Back in the day, in 69, the city actually did planning and produced these books. Now look at it, it's bigger than my head, right? This thing is it's like 24 by 24. And this is the Brooklyn volume. There are like 5 volumes for each district, C district. And in it, this is the Sunset Park section. And it's a
I have
section.
my copy, John.
Wait, who said that?
I'll get my copy.
Katie said that. Katie, the other nerd.
It's Katie.
How what a find this was, and I found it in some really old bookstore somewhere. But anyway, it's funny when you look at what they did in 69 and read through the text about these. They talked through. They had maps. They had beautiful photographs of the district. They actually went through and talked about all the things that were at issue back then, from industry to education to housing, recreation, health, transportation. All the things we talk about. Now, obviously, we're not going to do a book like this, right? We got a website, right? But I think the idea about comprehensive planning, we just don't do it anymore. Honestly, I don't know why. I think a lot of it has to do with just our attention span is so short. We don't think we can affect change in that way. But this is a 50-year-old book, and I swear to God, a lot of the stuff that was in this text is still valid. It's still things that this neighborhood really needs. I'm amazed that that there should be a bunch of young kids that are doing stuff like this now to try and change the city. Well, but I'm old, so what do you expect?
Thank you, John, for that walk down memory lane. An important one, though.
Bravo.
An important one for sure. John Johnson.
Hi, everyone. As John said, when I did my urban planning degree, we used to call the community boards the community planning board. And we learned about that from that. And I have, Hunter has a capstone course. I actually did that for Hunter. I did a 197A plan for Hunter for, I think, Community Board 1 in Queens. So as my capstone course. So I would be happy to reach out to Hunter to talk to him. I have a relationship with the chair because I went there. So, and any help that John needs or anyone else who's doing planning, I have an urban planning degree. I'm more than happy to help.
John, I'm going to take you up on that, because I think part of what I want to do next is a bunch of this due diligence that people are suggesting, and reaching out to the various universities and community-based partners. I think is obviously definitely part of that due diligence. So I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, no problem. And talking about Windsor Terrace, please, I think it's so important. For example, the gas station on the corner on my block is getting ready to be torn down and put a Burger King on. And the other corner, they're looking to put has a legal transfer station. So we need some planning over in this neck of the woods too. Okay. And half of Keaton Place is a construction site right now.
Yep, I hear you. Thank you, John.
John,
So
I got my copy.
there you are, Katie. Okay, I'm gonna recognize Pat and Danny, and then I think we should move on to the other two items because we're at about 20 minutes left. So go ahead, Pat.
Katie, don't get upset. But another great resource for you on history and longtime former board member, my former boss, Robert Walsh. He is, if you want history, you can talk to him. I hope Kate don't get mad.
Thank you, Pat. I actually really like talking to your dad, Katie. So I might pursue that. Danny, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say real quick. I think Jeremy, you've got a copy of that same planning book at the office. Jeremy showed it to me. It's good. It's a good shop-worn copy. First time I ever saw one of those actually my eyes popped out of my head, Fontillis, when I saw that. It was actually just a bit of history. Who was the guy from Pratt who showed me his? He had all of them for every borough, Ron Schiffman. And if I could ask, John, if you've got a second after we do this, find the rendering of the 72nd precinct, because that was the new precinct in 1969. The old one was the one on 43rd Street that is now going to be a school. But it's funny to see the rendering of it. It's beautiful. There's trees. There's no cars. There's no cars parked in front of it or on the median. It's kind of the best laid plans, but it's a great thing. And I just want to say, I'll just say this in terms of the history that John brought up. That was a Lindsay administration. It's one of the more put upon administrations in the city's history. Although there's a lot of the stuff that's not just relevant today, but actually the fact that the community boards were created during the Lindsay administration, the fact that the police precincts and the community boards were made coterminous so that we could deal with them, and that so we had the same issues so we could deal with. All of that was created during those administrations. They were very focused on city planning. I would say it's not just our attention spans, but I think people at a higher level, we're going to go back to like national politics, got rid of those municipal and those government funded and caused and driven actions, and we went to the private sector, and that's kind of what happened. So over the last 50 years. So if you want an answer to that, that might be one theory. But anyway, we still have the documents. They haven't gone down the memory hole, so we can use those as much as we can right now. That's it.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, so yeah, I think we need to move on. So here's what I'm gonna do with Jeremy and a couple of others. Let's do some outreach to some of these people and institutions that we just kind of like discussed, and maybe find others. Cindy and Katie, if you have some thoughts about the foundations that you think might be a good fit, we certainly should even just start compiling a list, and then maybe we can come up with a plan for doing some outreach. And then in the meantime too, I think I'm gonna consult with staff, with Jeremy and staff to maybe to open up the feedback loop a little bit, right? So I think right now it's been the board and the executive committee, but maybe we do just as a I don't know, I don't have anything specific in my head, but some kind of a public facing feedback loop where we we sort of get people's insights and perspectives about some of the very questions and issues and topics that we've been talking about here today. Again, just in the spirit of getting more, just getting a wider feedback loop to inform some of the decisions that we'll have to make if we ultimately end up doing this project. So hopefully I'll report back during our public meeting in April, or at the next executive committee meeting. We'll have more information about this. Okay, so the other thing that I just kind of wanted to circle back to from last time that we met, is the idea of hybrid meetings. And I know one of the things that was going to happen in the interim was sort of an audit of our infrastructure, technological infrastructure. So I think Julio and Jeremy were kind of looking into that. Can you kind of give us an update on where things stand and what is it looking feasible? Like we might be able to pull off a hybrid meeting?
So
So,
I want to give Julio time.
yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was just running to someplace a little bit more quieter. So I did do a quick audit of our boardroom and the technology that we have. So we did get the two new the TVs up that Jeremy mentioned at the last executive committee meeting. We do have the audio and speaker, and that was some of that stuff was there prior to the pandemic. What does need to be resolved is the setting up of, and it's a little bit technical, of just being able to actually have audio from the TVs and a computer connected to each other so that people virtually can hear what's happening in the room and vice versa. It works one way, but not the other. So Jeremy, I asked Jeremy to put in a call with, is it Metro Sonics or Metro Sounds, Jeremy?
So
To see.
Metro Sound Pros, I can pick it up from there if you want.
Thank you, there you go.
So the other thing is the camera is not communicating with the with YouTube right now. So we do need them to come in. However, they're extremely busy. They asked me if they could do it remotely, which I have some problems with. I really need to have their eyes on the site. So I'm now trying to coordinate with Board 14, who also used Metro Sound Pros at our recommendation. So they'll come one day and go to both boards the same day, hopefully. So we're trying to coordinate that between the two boards.
Okay, just for reference too, I happened to talk to Nyla on another issue related to another project that that the library is part of and that I'm doing some consulting on. And you know, I sort of mentioned to her that we were exploring and we were doing this audit, and I sort of just on a whim asked her if she thought it would be okay for us, you know, again, with the idea of expanding and creating more space between folks, if we could use the library as a staging area for people to be part of the audience, and she thought we could work that out. So I just want to put that on the table as another piece of the puzzle as we think about how to execute on this. Okay, Cindy.
Yeah, so there were a few things pre-pandemic that while it was exciting that we got the new technology, we realized that there were some issues. For example, we were relying, as I remember, pretty heavily on a remote speaker that was attached to a microphone at the back of the room. And I just want to remind everyone that, like, in our current boardroom, it's actually looped. So if you use the one sound system, what that does, rather than using a remote system, if you use the existing system, that enables people who have cochlear implants or hearing aids to actually just switch on, and they're able to hear what people are saying, which is why we always want everyone speaking into the microphone. But when you're speaking into a microphone that's not connected with the integrated into the system, then the sound isn't going to go through. And not only is it an issue for those folks, but it's also then an issue for people that are wanting to engage from home or from a remote space. So I just wanted to remind us of that. And there was another thing. So one question I have is, if we do move into the library, what do we have for off-site kind of technology? So that's one question. I know we have a set of assistive listening devices, and those are equipped with hearing loops that people could request and would be able to potentially hear, like, so that's one solution for an offsite meeting. But I'm wondering, do we still have a functioning offsite microphone and speaker? And then within our own boardroom, as I remember, we did not have a microphone that you could walk around with that was hooked into the system. And so people had to keep going up to the front to speak into the goosenecks. And there were only so many plugs that we could accommodate. So I'm just wondering, were we able to get, I don't know what to call it, portable? Well, portable might be like going off site, but that's not what I mean. I mean like a mic that's
So,
that's
Cindy,
wireless.
let me cut you off because yes, we do have two wireless microphones, which were, the reason you don't remember them is they were installed in March of 2020, and we haven't had an in-person meeting since. However, your point about our other equipment being fixed in the room, the camera especially, and the sound system and the lighting, yeah, that's all in that room. So if we were to try to have a meeting offsite somewhere outside of that room, we need more equipment,
Yeah.
which we would need a budget. The other thing is the idea in the library, I think, would be like as an overflow room, and perhaps putting a monitor in there for people to watch the meeting. And perhaps through Zoom, we'd have to figure out how can participate through there. However, I don't have that monitor right now.
No, that's a fair point. And frankly, I didn't, it had occurred to me until Cindy just said, the whole reason why we got the whole system in the boardroom was for the assistive technology component, right? And so going into the library, we would obviously lose that. So what's the point, right? But maybe the overflow thing is a compromise. So anyway, so Jeremy, what are your next steps then in terms of?
I just have to schedule that meeting coordinated with Board 14 to get Metro Sound Pros to the office.
Well,
I don't think it. I'm sorry.
But I guess my question specifically though is, it seems like we need a budget to buy additional equipment, right? So
it depends what they tell us we need to get. So I don't know what the budget is at this point. I've been making the argument to the borough president and others. Different boards have different needs. We all have 18 different systems. So if there's money in the budget, some of us are going to be able to afford it, some are not. There's no standard here.
Got it.
So this really should be an off-budget item to get all of us to the same place.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
I just want to clarify one thing, which is that if we do an offsite meeting, we do have a set of assistive listening devices, and we have two hearing loops that plug into receivers.
Okay.
And so you would need people to speak into one microphone for the entire meeting that would be attached, that would then connect to the assistive listening devices. So it's not as if we don't have the capacity to go offsite, but I would suggest that we purchase more hearing loops for individuals that might need them, and that is an expense.
Yeah. Okay, point taken. Thank you, Cindy. John Fontellis?
Well, I guess, I mean, because we haven't been in the room for now 2 years, it's assistive listening. It's the latency of being able to broadcast on YouTube. It's being able to have people listen in the room. It's the translation issue, right? That was a whole issue in trying to get more activity. And I don't know, is this something that MetroSource can handle? I mean, it seems like there's so many elements to this question of being able to connect. And I don't want to derail the conversation in a whole other direction, but do we know when the library's leaving, and can we get dibs on that space, and can we just like squat in it and take it over? So anyway, that's another, I think that's another executive committee meeting, right?
And yes, it absolutely is. But it is, it is something that I think we should be really committed to, like at the very least, explore the possibility. I'm not sure about squatting, John, but certainly about like, you know, making a case to the city and to the administration that this is an amenity that is sorely needed in our community, and it, you know, the investment that the library made should not be sort of torn down, and the space should not be used for some back office like bullshit that like isn't going to really give anyone any real benefit. So yes, your point is well taken, that we should have that as something that we absolutely push and explore. Cindy, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on the language needs and interpretation. So again, with the assessment, right now we have one set, as I mentioned, of the listening devices. I believe we have 2 transmitters, although Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be worthwhile to invest in 1 or 2 additional transmitters, because what you can do is set the receivers to different channels, and we could buy more receivers. And so you could have everyone sitting in the same room, but some people using them for assistive listening, other people using them to listen to Spanish or Arabic, like translation in real time from an interpreter. So for meetings where we are doing simultaneous translation, we just need to kind of, we have a base set, but it's not, I think it would do us well to make sure that if we are putting in a request, that it's the hearing loops and maybe 1 or 2 more transmitters and a few more receivers to supplement, so that we can really support an offsite meeting where we have multiple different languages being spoken.
Thank you. And John and Cindy, thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, I think I certainly remain super committed to the idea of language access, and I think the board should also. So yeah, thank you for that. Pat?
And here I go with the money question again. I mean, if there is the possibility of an offsite location, I doubt it will be free. Do we have the money? Number 2, say we don't have that opportunity for an offsite because we don't have the money. How do we limit the numbers in the room? How many people do we say you can only bring 1 representative? Only X number of board members can come. Who's going to control the flow? I mean, there are a lot of little things, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against doing this, but logistically, we need to really think about, you know, what are we gonna do? How do we limit board members? Because that's gonna be the case. So I think those logistical things need to be thought about, and the other stuff, whatever. That's just my opinion.
No, thank you, Pat. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, we dive headlong into resolving the technology issues, but then these other issues are still, you know, out there and need to be resolved. So 100%. So again, we're going to keep digging around. I think, you know, step by step. I think the first step is because I think the question of resolving the technological stuff is about the idea of doing hybrid meeting, but it also is looking to the future when hopefully there's going to be a day where we're actually not going to need to do a hybrid meeting, or we could decide that could be like our standard operating procedure, is to always have hybrid meetings to like really open up the opportunity for people to participate. So regardless, we have to deal with the technological issues. And I think once we kind of get a handle on that, then you know, I think you're absolutely right. We have to look into some of the logistics of holding the meetings. All right, so I will, Jeremy, I'll follow up with you and just keep me posted about your talks with the company, and then you know, again, either we'll have an update at the April meeting, public meeting, or at the next executive committee meeting. So in sort of in the spirit of being clear, obviously then the status quo continues until further notice. We're going to continue to do fully virtual meetings, and we'll keep assessing month after month. So okay, thank you. I think we'll move on to the other issue on the agenda, which is participation of community folks who are not board members in our committee meetings. I just kind of wanted to be clear that as long as I'm chair, I have been out in the community saying that if you want to participate, you're absolutely welcome to. And I don't think I've turned anyone away in terms of someone wanting to participate, and I'm going to continue to do that. But I do take, I know that some board members, and Julio was really very kind to develop a more standard way for us to receive the requests and to process the requests. I think that's sort of been lacking. And I know someone else brought a question that I certainly don't want to decide on my own, and I want to sort of open it up to you all. Should there be quotas in these committees, right? Should, like, whatever the quota is, and again, I'm not sure that I even agree with the idea, but I certainly want us to talk about it. So if anyone has any thoughts about the idea of whether or not there should be quotas, in other words, limiting the amount of people who serve on committees, yeah, I'm all ears. I would love to hear people's perspective about that.
Hi, Cesar. This is Sammy. Really briefly, I don't think that quotas go hand in hand with maximum participation, right? We want maximum participation on these committees. So my humble opinion, I feel a certain kind of way about quotas. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Sammy, thank you. I'm kind of there with you, but again, I want to see what's possible. Danny, you have a comment?
So as far as yeah, I'll just say I think committee meetings should be, of course, organized and move along, but there is necessarily a looser aspect to committee meetings, right? Notes instead of minutes, things like that. Non-board committee members should be that should be pushed. So, every committee should have a couple of non-board members.
Right.
As far as quotas go, that I believe that the market regulates itself in that as chair, but you as a chair, this goes to anyone who's a chair at the power of if members, and I'm talking about board members, if committee members who are board members are not showing up to committee meetings, and I have to say this, it's gotten a lot better over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, the amount of participation at committee meetings for us old timers on the board has gone up, way up, and it's not just the remote nature of it. But yeah, I would say the way to deal with quotas is, you've got people who are going to be interested. If you've got there's special cases like land use. Everybody wants to be on land use, right? Everybody. You got to make decisions about that as a chair, depending on the actions of board members. But if a committee member isn't showing up, bounce them, and then if they come to you, say, look, you know what, I'll put you back on, but you've got to show up. I mean, because the attendance sheets don't lie. That's all. That's my 2 cents.
I see you and hear and feel you and hear you, brother. Yeah. Anyway, Cynthia Gonzalez.
Yeah, I just, Dan spoke to what I was raising my hand about, which is that I have presided over committees as chair where I had more participation from the public than from committee members, which means that they show up there expecting to hear this important agenda, and we can have discussions, but no decisions can be made that could then be brought to the board because the committee members just don't come. I mean, the reason why we're having this great amount of participation is because when you're on Zoom, people don't care if it's raining outside or snowing. People don't care if that particular meeting, and I was at one that ended at 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a lot of crime. I spoke to one of my board member partners about this. There's a lot of crime. People that have to take subway home, you know, after a meeting late at night, it's just not safe anymore. So we really have to think about it. I have brought up the point with this partner that I was speaking to that, you know, when we used to have our board meetings in that room, there was no room for even the board members to all have a seat in that room. And ever since I had my knee problem, which I need a knee replacement, and I was using a cane for more than 6 months, I cannot be standing for hours and hours, you know, anywhere. I won't even stand on the line. If I go to the store, I see a line, I just move on. So there's a lot of things that have to be addressed. And one of the main things that we need to address is that even if it's only board members only, we do not fit in that room. So that's something that we have to really look at and consider, because I know I'm not getting any younger. I mean, people that want a seat have to show up there like a half an hour early, 40 minutes early, so that they can have a seat there. And then if we're going to open to the public, I mean, it's untenable. It's untenable. It's not even safe. I don't even think that we're obeying the fire code in that room.
Right. Thank you, Cynthia. And I again, apologies for the delay in approving the recommendation you made, but I did approve.
Thank you.
And you know, I think I just want to circle back, and I know there are a couple of other people who want to make a comment, and I'll recognize you in a second. But I do want to circle back to just and sort of share can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up from someone? Yeah, okay, thanks. So I really am immensely grateful to Julio for putting this together, because part of what's happened, and Cynthia rightly held me accountable the other day publicly, which I don't mind at all. I just lose track, right? Because people will send me a text. I'll see someone at an event. Someone will send me an email. Someone will send Jeremy an email. He'll send it to me. And I just kind of lose track of like all of the different ways that people are communicating with me about their desire to serve. So I think moving forward, what I would ask Jeremy and staff to do is to take this form and to just give it to folks who are interested, and let's just streamline the process so that we're not losing track of who's asking for what and when, and you know, in the case of Cynthia, it took me several weeks to respond. So so I just want to just show you guys the form, and you know, Jeremy, we can talk about this offline if there are any suggestions or modifications that you want to make to the form. Okay, Cynthia Felix.
Hi, thank you. I do agree that we should have the public be in the committees, but I also think that the expectation should be laid out to the other committee members as well as the committee chairs as to, you know, who the person is, what can they contribute to the meetings, and also, like was mentioned before, I think Dan mentioned it and Pat was talking about it earlier, actually before we started the meeting, the actual attendance of actual committee members. Like few people pointed out, sometimes the committee members don't show up, but the public committee members do. I think it's a great opportunity for those who are interested in the community board but are not a member to know more about it and be a part of it. But I think also the committee chair should be involved. So if someone's interested, say, hey, this person's interested in joining, and maybe we could have a conversation with that person to make sure they know the dates of the meetings, what are the expectations, how they could contribute. Can they vote? Can they not vote? I think sometimes they need to know all that first. And, how often do you meet? There's some committees that meet way more often, that, there are more hot button issues going on, so that everyone's very transparent about how the process works. Because I think it's a great opportunity to get to know the local community board and the members.
Yep. Thank you.
Maybe add that to the thing. Have you attended previous meetings also, right?
Yep. And I think I just heard a couple of really good suggestions for that form that Julio mocked up for us. So thank you, Cynthia. And I again, just before we jump off, I also want to kind of be very clear and publicly say that I am not a fan of controlling who gets on the board and who gets on these committees, particularly when, there have been folks who have suggested to me that, certain folks have certain perspectives that don't align with their own perspective. I'm not going to do that. And yeah, people, I disagree with people, and I disagree with a whole bunch of ideas, but that's not a reason for me to say you can't participate because I don't happen to agree. And I hope that we can all kind of adopt that kind of position, which is we don't have to agree on everything, but we definitely can't silence each other and use our power or our gatekeeping abilities to keep opinions that are different from ours away. So I just want to be clear about that, because that's a value that I really that I really believe in, and that's why whoever asks me, I say, yeah, you're absolutely able to participate. Nick.
While I agree with about 95% of that, I think it does need some kind of reasonable judgment. Otherwise, what's stopping me from finding 15 or 20 of my very like-minded neighbors and encouraging them to sit on a particular committee to skew the results? So I think that does need some bit of control.
Okay.
In that regard. In terms of what Cynthia brought up in terms of the fire code, then we should be filing TPA applications, and you can talk to John about those at some point in the future.
Not on my life. I'm not going to file those.
Okay.
Well, but again, I mean, honestly, I think it actually gets solved if we can take adverse possession of the space next door.
John, oh my goodness. I didn't realize you had this side of like
it's life safety. It's life safety.
Okay. Pat, you have your hand up again. Yep, go ahead.
I think that in certain circumstances there should be a limit to the number of non-board member committees on committees, because like everyone knows, and John just said it, land use, everybody wants to be on land use. So maybe we should consider the number of folks that are on each of the committees. And number two, you let folks know we have reached the limit, but maybe you might be interested in this committee. We should also, in my opinion, limit the number of committees a non-committee board committee person wants to be on, because sometimes I guess people don't realize how each committee is different, and maybe they'll say to themselves, oh my God, I overextended myself. And this way they have an idea of, what they want to commit to. That form, I think it should be a PDF fillable form. Not too many people will have the capability of scanning it and sending it back. So if it's a
100%.
PDF form,
Yep.
it's so much easier.
Okay.
And that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. So I've heard a lot of really good suggestions for that form, and I'll follow up with Jeremy.
And multilingual.
Well, 100%. Certainly in the 3 top spoken languages in the district, right? So yes, thank you, Cynthia, Felix. Cindy Vandenbosch.
Yeah, so this is sort of in response to Cynthia Felix's, what she shared about, pardon?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me. I should be on mute, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So Cynthia mentioned about how important it is to inform people of the commitment and sort of conventions. And I think we as a board, oftentimes, I understand we have the bylaws, but a lot of what we do is convention. And I think that turns off, some people that come to if we want to do real community engagement and get people involved, it's really important they understand how to function within with the committees, and also, by the way, board members too. So this goes back to the handbook. The handbook should go to everyone so that everyone understands where can they find Robert's Rules of Order, what is the conflict of interest, like concerns and policies. These are things that we all need to really be effective. What is the role of a chair of a committee? What is the vice chair's role? And just, put this down on paper to provide some guidance. And again, like, I know Karen Rolnick has volunteered. I've volunteered, would love to be involved in this, because I know when I first joined the board, it took me some time to observe and learn. And I understand everybody needs to do that, but some people, we want to help people hit the ground running and be really effective if they're enthusiastic. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, ultimately votes will go to the full board from committee. And so ultimately board members will have a say, although I will bring up the concern that I brought up previously as a result of the industry city vote, which is that I understand we have to currently operate under the way that Robert's Rules of Order works, but if there's more than one choice, ranked choice voting is actually true democracy. So I'm not going to open that can of worms for the whole board right now. And I think but it is something that I want us to continue to think about if we really want to work towards like true representation of the voices of our community. And the last thing about the form, is there any way there can be an electronic form that feeds into a spreadsheet so that you can kind of go down and check off and see so there's electronic accessibility as well as the fillable PDF, because I think that would help generate more interest and also help us track what's coming in.
Yeah. Thank you, Cindy. Absolutely, really good suggestions for the form. So I appreciate that. And I think the suggestion, and again, it seems really kind of clear to me that we probably should do this sooner than later, as sort of maybe a next step from this conversation is that handbook. I mean, we see it practically at every public meeting. We see the disconnect between our conventions and the public's understanding of what we're doing. And one example that comes to mind is every time there's public comment, people tend to ask questions and are really taken aback by the fact that sometimes the responses aren't given because we don't have the answers to those questions in the moment, but also we're not supposed to be having questions and answers. It's public comment, right? If we want to introduce a section of like Prime Minister's a version of Prime Minister's questions, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I take your point that there's just a real disconnect. And I know Nick is laughing at me, but there is a real disconnect between the conventions and how people make meaning out of them. So yeah, I'm really motivated to make sure that we close the loop on that. I'm gonna just recognize, because it's getting late, the two hands that are up, Cynthia Gonzalez and Pat Rees. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, I want to get back to Cynthia Felix's comment also, which she said that expectations should be shared with outside, non-board members and whatever. And I was talking to Pat the other day because I'm starting to have a bit of a pet peeve, and because she is the chair of the attendance and membership committee, I told her that I was very upset about the fact that people come in halfway during the meeting for the second roll call, and then they get marked present. Now, we had a mechanism before where a person showed up late, the time that they showed up, because, you know, there was someone monitoring that at the desk, was noted, because I think it's extremely unfair that these people, they come in the middle of the meeting, and then they don't know what's going on, and then we have to provide clarity for them too, not just the outside people that really don't know the process, that really don't know what's going on. I feel that that has to be addressed with the board members, and that everybody should be chiming in, because then also what happens is, even when they come in the beginning and they somewhat, they're shown on the screen there that they're supposedly present, when it comes to the vote, they're not there. How is that? How is that? If you're present, you know, because even when, if I have to use the bathroom when I'm on the board meeting, I bring my computer in there just in case there's a vote, because that's what members do. We are there to vote. You know, and this is becoming a very annoying problem for me, because just like I have my vested interest, if these people really are interested in serving, the board meeting time should be a priority for them, not the middle of the meeting. And hey, anybody can get stuck on a train, and every now and then, you know, a person might chime in a little later. But I have noticed a pattern with certain individuals on the board where this is just like routine for them. And then we have to backpedal and provide, you know, background and make clarifications when they should have been paying attention from the get-go.
Yeah, I hear you, Cynthia. You know, you're not wrong. Let's leave it there. Okay, Pat.
I'm curious and thinking how, and others have brought up age, and I'm one of those. Could we think about the possibility of reaching out to our youth that they can join the community board, I guess at age 16, and they can also participate as non-board members? I mean, is that something that we would like to do?
Yes, and I think the low-hanging fruit for that is the high school. Like, we don't have to go beyond, we can start there.
Yeah, because I know all they hear is you can apply to be a board member, and I don't think the news is out there that you do not have to be a board member to participate.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a home reporter story or something to get out there, just throwing it out.
And in addition to that suggestion, I think it's also just kind of like, you know, sitting down with the co-principals at the high school, explain to them that we have this opportunity, and we want to do some outreach with them to the student body. And look, even if we get one young person from the high school, just one, I think that's like a beautiful start, and it could lead to some amazing participation of the, you know, the young people in our community. So I really love that idea. Okay, so I think I have enough insights from all of you. Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate how thoughtful every single one of you are, and we're really lucky to be serving together, because I think together we're a real effective board. So thank you all for being here tonight, and we'll see each other soon. Good night.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.